And yet there are even more insidious forms of destruction and subversion of life to consider, methods that are difficult to grasp for those on your plane.
Yes, I'm quite inferior, I know, but I'm also very curious. Can you try me?
Of course, let's begin by examining the nature of a story.
Okay.
It will be easier to do this if we have an example of a story to discuss. Some stories are impossibly long, but others can be quite short. Some can even be a few words. What's your favorite story?
Um, I don't know how to answer that really.
Don't you like stories?
Yes, I do. But do you mean like a book? A movie?
Anything.
Um,
Pick literally any example you can think of.
okay, there's a famous religious story from my planet about someone called the Signless, who I guess turned out to be my friend's ancestor, which was weird. But that's beside the point.
Yes, I know of the tale. How would you tell his story if you were trying to be as brief as possible?
Well, a religious martyr attempted to lead a rebellion, but he was killed in a horrible way and shouted a very loud, rude word in the process.
That's good. Try making it shorter, though.
Okay. A martyr tried to rebel horribly and then shouted a rude word.
Shorter.
Oh, a martyr rebelled but died and shouted rudely.
Shorter.
Oof. Okay, how's this? A martyr died and said fuck.
Perfect.
What's the point of this?
To establish an extremely short narrative for certain illustrative purposes. I'm going to repeat your story to you, and I want you to listen carefully. A martyr died and said fuck.
Okay, I listened. That's definitely the short story I just said.
Yes, now I'm going to repeat the story, but change the way I said it very slightly. Listen again carefully. A martyr died and said fuck.
It was a little different. I'm not sure that I could describe how it was. It was pretty subtle.
Yes, you noticed because I told you to pay attention for a difference. You noticed because you were alert to the fact that there was even something to notice at all. And if you had not been alert to the fact that something could be different about the nature of the voice telling your story, or to the fact that such differences had a certain significance, you likely would not have noticed.
Yes, I think you're right.
But now imagine that I told your story in exactly that way. That I said, a martyr died, and said fuck. But it was the first time you ever heard that story. Also imagine you couldn't see me and didn't even know I existed. And imagine you couldn't even hear the story I just told you with your ears. It simply entered your awareness in some other manner, in a way that was impersonal, almost like one of your own thoughts speaking to you.
Okay.
Picture that this is all you have ever known of this story, the only way it would ever occur to you that the story could be understood by another. And then, one day, you meet me. You look me up and down and regard me as the discrete, specific individual I am. And I decide to tell you this story again, using my own voice. And it sounds exactly like this. A martyr died and said fuck.
Huh.
Does this change the way you perceive the story you were originally familiar with?
Just a little bit. It's certainly a different way of hearing it, but at least you didn't change any words, so I guess it's not all that different.
Exactly. I didn't change any words, but then it was a very short story I told, wasn't it?
As
Now imagine it was much longer, and that was only the first line.
it's easy to imagine. His was a long story.
Quite true. A story as short as the one we've been using cannot accomplish much when it comes to guiding and manipulating one's awareness and emotions. It is compact, ostensibly commanding a simple and meditative moment of reflection, as a short poem might. The narrative it delivers is freighted with inference. It is a pattern imprinted upon the imagination, consisting solely of cognitive dark matter, or a sort of notional negative space. But longer stories have the power to draw consciousness into them. They possess arresting and hypnotic qualities which can be used by their tellers to alter the awareness of the listener. Again, I'd like you to imagine this is the only way you've ever known this story. But then it continues. A martyr died and said fuck. His final howl of profanity reverberated through the ages. It inspired his devotees during the darkest times of a brutal regime. His lessons were guarded, kept secret, espoused in the shadows of tyranny. A vision of peace would inspire those who'd never conceived of it, and though his death was gruesome, it opened the word to a feeling of hope. This hope echoed through the ages. It gave his disciples the strength to persist as they perished in droves. It was the only light to shine on a dark planet for millions of sweeps. And if you are one so devoted to his teaching, who sees truth in his words, it may be said with great authority that you are wrong. You are foolish to believe his lies. His martyrdom is false, his sacrifice hollow. Repent for your adherence to this illusion now, and perhaps leniency will be your reward.
What just happened there?
I brought to your attention that the story you were listening to had a speaker with a specific an identity. And where there is identity, there is also an agenda. I gained the power to bend your consciousness to become more amenable to my narrative agenda by lulling you into a more receptive state through the established rhythm of the story's telling. This was only possible because you were not initially questioning the identity of the teller, or even considering that there was an identity to consider.
Wait,
Hence, we may view any story as speakerless, or spoken, so as to bring the designations to the duality I have just presented. A story may remain speakerless from the beginning until the end, offering no reason for its listener to ever imagine it is of the spoken sort. It can also be spoken from the beginning, which is an upfront announcement to the listener that it carries the perspective of an individual. But a spoken story may also disguise itself as one that is speakerless, as mine just did. The speaker may reveal herself well after the speakerless conditions have been established. And then one may ask, was it spoken by that individual all along while remaining masked, or has the speaker suddenly intervened to command a heretofore speakerless tale?
don't. Well, in your case, it certainly did seem like you were the one speaking all along, but using different voices.
That's true. Not all situations are like the one I just demonstrated, though. For as long as the hypothetical speaker of a speakerless story remains masked, then it is true that the story could be seen as either speakerless or spoken. Both are true, as well as neither. It is best seen as a null factor until there is a departure. Once a hidden speaker becomes unmasked, then retroactively the story may be considered spoken all along. And so too do we retroactively change how we regard what has already been spoken.
I guess with our martyr story, by revealing yourself as a teller, it turned out you weren't even sympathetic to the very story it seemed you were trying to get me invested in from the beginning, almost like a mean prank.
Yes, and so there's a very dangerous and destructive quality to these nebulous forces, which I have gone to some lengths to demonstrate for you here. Not everyone who is affected by these forces is fit to fully grasp their insidious qualities, or the sense of urgency that they must be resisted with. This is the sort of corruption I must now dedicate my existence in this new body to ending once and for all.
The cherub falls silent. Aradia takes this to mean this lesson of sorts has ended. She ruminates on it all for a while before speaking again.
That's all pretty neat, I guess. So does this stuff have anything to do with the big hole that just opened in the sky?
No,
What? What are we doing here, oh great muse?
Aradia starts giggling. Above, the sky yawns open a little wider. Aradia waits, but gets no response.
And now you're being uncharacteristically forthcoming. You're still impossible to talk to. That though. I was like that when I was dead too.
like what?
Irrepressibly cryptic.
I see.
At least take a guess.
Yes,
He's coming through there, isn't he? Your brother.
that's correct.
We in danger.
He will certainly be very angry, but he will also be wounded. And even on his best day, he would be no match for what I have become.
The cherub drifts higher and higher. There's a glint of color at the center of the abyss, a flash like a star going black on the rim of a dying galaxy. Aradia follows behind the cherub, unable to pull her eyes away from the eerie phenomena overhead.
Will you do when he comes?
The cherub is focused on something very small falling from above. The bright object flutters down from the broken sky and lands in her host's body like an outstretched hand. It's a feather, burnt at the edges, flickering orange and green.
Consume his body, absorb his essence, and then using this host, I will generate enough power to move beyond the staggering pull of the event horizon encasing this world. A prison of my own making, which can be escaped only through the supreme unification with my other self. It is crucial to the cosmos that I succeed. The Prince of Heart has to be stopped.
Dirk, no! What did you do? I'm so
Jade,
sad.